Hello, Vinyl Junkies. Welcome to episode 53. Digging in L.A. Record Digging in L.A. Hey, kids. Want to win some records? Do you want to win good records? We're going to try to focus on independent record stores and try to give the love to the small stores that really keep this whole thing alive. So if you want to win swag, including this amazing Sun Ra record from Warg Music, Janice, and a record from Light in the Attic, Vinyl Me Please, Energy Control Center, an amazing Texas funk record, and record brushes from Vinyl Style and record from Run Out Groove. Just share this video and tell us your favorite record store. Tag your favorite record store so that we can see what it's about. So check it. The show kind of writes itself this time because last week was Los Angeles. And it was fun. It was an entire weekend of nothing but vinyl nerdery, and I'm glad you guys are here to pay attention to it because I'm going to tell you the stories, all right? Thanks for tuning in, guys. Get yourself a drink. Let's get this done. All right, the way it started was this. I like the idea. I think all of us do, right? I mean, there's some of us that don't work, don't live in places where there's independent record shops, so we don't have a chance to really do much shopping in terms of, actually going to the store and hanging out and talking music and all. So Discogs comes into the picture. But for the rest of us, the record store is more than just a place where you buy your music. It's a cultural center. It's a place where we can talk together and enjoy each other and share music and suggest stuff. So we were provided here at Vinyl Junkies with the perfect opportunity to do just that. Jack Stoughton of Stoughton Printing Company, maker of the infamous Stoughton tip-on jackets, was celebrating their 50th anniversary of making record jackets for vinyl. So they decided to do an open house. They've done this before, but an open house. So yes, Jack sends me an invite. Nice invite too, just to kind of give you an idea of how it looks. But check this, man. Right? Look at that. Pop up and everything. So this comes in, open house. And Jack tells me, all right, well, look, give me your address. I want to invite you to this. Okay. Then goes one step further and says, hey, why don't you invite some of your Vinyl Junkies friends there? We would love to give them a tour of the factory so that they can see for themselves how album jackets are made. Hey, absolutely. I knew there were going to be a lot of industry people, so that's exactly what we did. So rather than just make it that one thing, what I decided to do for Vinyl Junkies is make a weekend of it. I know there's a lot of California Vinyl Junkies, so I decided to kind of start the thing at Stoughton and then move it over to Saturday so that we can just have a big old record crawl and start digging into the independent record shops in L.A. Now, I got to visit only 4 of them, okay? And I got to visit a record fair and look for fish tacos. So there's a lot of stories, and I'll try to make it as much as possible so that, I stay on track. But you know me, I don't stay on track very much. Okay, so here's the deal. We've visited 4 shops. I'll tell you about all 4 of them. But why don't we start with Stoughton, okay? I guess the personal thing. Of course, I was very happy to receive an invite because I'd been there before, and it seems like nothing, right? It's like, who makes these jackets? How does this work? But the thing is I think I've argued it already, that because you're selling music on vinyl, it's not just a question of the music. It's a question of the tactile experience, and it's a question of immersing yourself in the music and in the experience with as much of your 5 senses as possible. So once upon a time, vinyl was the only way to do it, so we kind of took it for granted. But the thing is now we can stream. There's a whole lot of ways of getting music easily, right? So the tactile part of it, the album jacket, for the first time in a really long time, starts becoming important because the people who are streaming their music are not the same people that are buying their music and sitting down with it. We sit down, we look at the jackets. I've spoken about this before. So Stoughton's been doing really well with that, and I'm really glad that there's a renaissance of this information. So they did this open house, right? Now, I'd visited before, and man, they were doing tours every hour on the hour, and they're really detailed. The first thing that kind of struck me immediately was just the sheer amount of machinery and square footage that it takes to do this. Because you figure, you know, just how long does it take to make this kind of thing? You know, you figure an album jacket. I'm pretty sure this is a Stoughton anyway, but, right? And there's just room after room. And I'm not the smartest guy, so I don't pay attention to everything. But one thing that immediately did become obvious was this is far more detailed than I ever thought. And once you speak to the staff, you realize their attention to detail is really what it is that makes the difference between a cheap jacket and not a cheap jacket. So what I did was I invited a bunch of vinyl junkies and decided to put together a couple of grab bags for all of you so that we can buy them, right? And on and off a dozen of you showed up. So thank you to all of you that made the weekend amazing. I'll name drop you as the time goes by, but we'll start at Stoughton, a dozen of us. Now, Jack does this property, right? Of course, there's all the industry people, but there's an open bar there. There's a food truck there. There's a country band there. Everyone's having a good time. So, we're there talking music, solid 4 or 5 hours. Some of us are a little bit more refreshed than others. But everyone's getting quite refreshed and everyone's having a good time. Overwhelmingly, smiles everywhere. I was happy to be able to give these records to people, and I thank my sponsors for doing it. Vinyl Style put these in our hands so that we can give them to you. And it was overwhelmingly positive. And speaking to all of these people, it always came down to the same thing. I can't believe how much detail goes into just making an album jacket. And it was the most fascinating thing in the world. Now, in some cases, we actually had some graphic designers, like Michael Potter Winchester's a graphic designer. So it was total nerdery for these guys, because it wasn't just about the music, it was about the fact that they love design. They went to the point of there was a stock car with the Stoughton logo, and there was the old style printing presses that you crank, and they made these posters where you can kind of hand crank your own poster and your own coasters. So we're talking about the full experience, and you really just not only got the impression of exactly how modern and bleeding edge things can be, because believe me, Stoughton Printing Company is bleeding edge. The jackets are the best, and if they corner the market, that's why. But you also got a real big pull from the past, because those old machines that you just crank were there, and it was mind-blowing to see it. And there were people in the heat just showing it, and everyone had a smile, and there were valet parking. Now, I wish I had pictures to show you, but there's this big wall in Stoughton, okay? They've made thousands of jackets, but there's this big wall way up. On the one side, there's the first pressing machine that they've ever used. On the other side is this just enormous wall with wall-to-wall jackets all over the place. And I know what my reaction was the first time I saw it, but I saw it in every single person that visited. It's like, whoa, this is the coolest thing in the world. And what would happen is all of us would just sit next to each other, put our arms around each other, and take pictures next to that wall. That wall, to me, is already legendary, because that's the history of music on vinyl. That's the history of the stuff that you're holding in your hands today, right? So everything started there, and people that we've been communicating with on the Vinyl Junkies forum. You're welcome to join the Vinyl Junkies forum if you wish. On Facebook, it's a private forum, but those of us that have been talking and sharing music for years finally came together. Like I said, all said and done, about a dozen of us. And folks, it is absolutely the best thing in the world to be able to meet somebody and share this passion. You'll be the judge at the end of this entire thing, but to sit down with Jeffrey Curving, who I've known, and his wife, Kathy, I've known for years, over the forum, and smoke a joint with the dude and just talk music was cool. To have a drink with Rob, who's got the longest ass beard in the world. This guy looks like he works at Stoughton, and somebody actually mistaken him for Jack's son. He's not. He's just worked there for 31 years. And he came with his family. His son Austin was there, and his wife Lisa was there. You got the feeling it was this family affair. Okay? And that's what you want, because those are the types of intangibles that you want to experience when you listen to music. You want the stories. It's not just about the music, it's the stories. So you go into this environment, imagine that, right? Where the jackets are being made, the history of this record is being put together, okay? And you got people, you realize very shortly that everyone that worked there had been there forever. Jack, obviously, sat as his father's foot as all of this was happening. And Rob had been there for 31 years. Now, this guy's not old. I mean, he's got to be, what, in his late 40s, early 50s at the latest, okay? He looks like a cross between Matt Hessler of Vinyl Me Please and the old guy with the beard on what's it called? The Simpsons. Cross between both of them. We're going to be doing a show. I actually taped a show, a live show about record packaging. Don't know if it turned out all right, but there were a lot of technical difficulties. But we did it, and I look forward to putting it together for you. But you notice that people were there 20 years, 30 years. And it was very much a family affair. And you notice that these people really cared about what it is that they were putting together. Why does this matter? Can I tell you why this matters? Because in order to sell music on vinyl, you have to give a shit about music on vinyl. You have to understand it. Okay, and anybody that puts effort understands that it's more than just music. I'm going to try putting on these headphones and see if it's easier. Yeah, I can hear myself. I think it's a little easier for me. And Stoughton puts all that effort in there. And when you see the employees so dedicated to what they're doing and putting that work in, and they've been there for years and years and years, it tells you something. It tells you that they follow the tradition that vinyl and the people like us who listen to records look for. Okay, I'll get to the record swap soon enough, but I'd like to leave one more thing as we were going there. One thing that caught me, the thing that probably interested me more of everything. By the time you know, the entire thing was over, it started at about 10:30. I showed up at about 10:30. There were already a gang of vinyl junkies there. Dave Thompson helped me put the entire thing together. So a bunch of us were just waiting for this to happen. You know, had a couple of beers to start, but the thing that caught me, the thing that I thought, the biggest lasting impression that it left with me, you know what it was? At the end of the entire thing, okay, there was parking, all this, but at the end of the entire thing, I'd say I left at around 5 o'clock, so which is the end of the event, right? Saying your goodbyes, and what it is that you saw was, it was a regular work day for a lot of those people that were working there, and you know, they employ a lot of people. So by the end, you saw that all of the picnic tables that were set up under that tent were filled with people who had just gotten off the job. But it's not only that we saw. What it is that we saw is that their families were there too. And they had their music on, and there were a lot of Latinos there, and they were playing this music, and it got festive. They were having fun. It was Friday night, and their families were together. And you saw they were all huddled together. Now, these weren't people to do business. These are people that work together. But you saw that they were all huddled together, and they were singing together, and they were laughing. And at one point, one guy picks up a mic, and a song came on, and he just starts singing to his wife, and everyone's watching. That was the cincher for me. That is precisely why you go visit any independent shop or any place that matters. That you go visit a not big box type place. I saw that, and I saw a bunch of people that gave a shit about each other. I saw family. And I immediately understood what it was about. So I guess I'm going to stop on the Stoughton bit, but all this is to tell you that when you're getting the jackets and we're talking about the best jackets out there, there's a whole lot there. There's a tradition that speaks for itself. One other thing in closing that actually, I had one doubt about the tip-on jackets. I guess I'll have to go into tip-on jackets a little bit to kind of give you an idea. Okay, but there are two types of jackets. There are direct-to-board jackets, okay? And direct-to-board jackets are like this. So what it means is that the cardboard, they print directly on the cardboard, okay? Tip-on jackets is a different thing. Tip-on jackets is that there's the cardstock already there, and what they do is then they print the actual cover and glue it on. So if you take a look, for example, inside at this Thou record, you'll notice here that, you know, it's glued on. That's what a tip-on jacket is. Now, if you've opened enough of these, okay, when you open them up, besides, actually, there's few little things that you can do also with tip-on jackets. Check it, dude. Right? When even the inside of the jacket is colored, it kind of makes it look a little nicer. But the thing that always caught me was, as I opened this, right, because they're glued, sometimes as you look along here, okay, you can notice that, I mean, there's a little bit of light. So for me, every time I buy a tip-on jacket, it feels nice. But the concern that I had was, what happens over time if it just tears? It's just the tip-on the outside will just kind of tear and you'll get a big seam split. Not so, because I learned something that was really cool. And it's something that you don't see, but it is something that absolutely makes a difference. I'm going to share a little tip with you on exactly why Stoughton is the absolute best. I hadn't asked the question, but Jack kind of showed me, right? What it is that they do is they got this patent. They got this patent design, okay, which basically right around here, they create this lip, okay, so that it's cardboard all the way through here. What that does is it strengthens the spine of the record. So it prevents that that possibility of every time you put your record in and out of creating seam splits, because right where the record touches the spine, if it ever were to touch the spine, it's reinforced. Furthermore, it's also reinforced in here. Let's say if it's a single jacket, okay? In a single jacket, what they do is they have this kind of like double carton, okay, that kind of just comes, and what it does is, rather than just one piece of thing like that, it's just this kind of like lip that goes right here that strengthens the spine, again, to fight, to prevent seam splits, which is very big, right? Because there's nothing more frustrating than buying an old record and having all your seam split over here and not being able to read it. But it's one step further that really gets into the spine porn of things and really gets into, you know, how vinyl is completely different now than it was before. Because there was that, the record rests inside, but what it does is it creates a much thicker, more visible spine, which is aesthetically a lot more pleasing. You put it on the shelf, you put it on your record shelves, and they just kind of stand out a whole lot more. So instead of something thin, because there's another 2 pieces of cardboard there, you get a nice, thick, legible spine. These are things I did not know, and I can absolutely tell you that these are things that do make a difference, because if you take a look back there at any of my stuff that was printed by Stoughton, and I think of my Light in the Attic records, I think about a lot of the Vinyl Me Please stuff, the spines are all a lot thicker, so you can read them. So when you're looking, right, you can kind of see what the names are and just pick out your records a lot quicker. So there you go. There's a little, I don't know exactly when they started doing that, but there's a little difference between how jackets were made and how jackets are made now, and what separates these guys from everybody else. But the important part of this was just, there were a gang of us, and we had a good time, and we had drinks, and we smoked, and we ate, and we did smiles all around. And this was just a Friday. So we know that the next Saturday it's going to go off, because we're going to go visit a bunch of record stores. Now, In terms of what it is that we're going to talk about, I mean, I met Patrick from Light in the Attic. And I've been trying to get Light in the Attic to work with us since forever. And it was a blast just telling him exactly how much I love the records and why I think they're really the best reissue label and one of the best curated labels out there. And I'm hoping that, you know, that relationship, it seemed interesting. It seemed everything, you know, will lead so that we can work with them so that we can tell you about these records. We can't talk about records that we don't have, right? And we do have some amazing shows coming up. Next week, we're going to be doing an Africa show, for example, or actually a world music show with Grant Austin. So the show will be called, I think, Brazil to West Africa. Me and Grant Austin will be going off and talking about West African records from the Horn of Africa with Brazil, right? And Light in the Attic releases a lot of this stuff. As a matter of fact, they're putting out a series of 5 Japanese kind of psych folk records from a legendary artist called Haruno Hosono. And I'd love to talk about that, but you know, you can't talk about things you don't have. And a Japanese psych episode will definitely come up at one point. But, you know, you make the relationship and you hope that the rest speaks for itself. Same thing with Chad at Acoustic Sounds. You know, they make very, very strong jazz records. So we'll see exactly where that goes along. Anyway, what it is that happens is I wind up meeting some friends that I had made the last time I went from LA. Evan and his wife Sunshine, who work at Alliance Entertainment, or more specifically for you guys, Vinyl Style. Okay, they're the ones who put these in the grab bag. You can win the grab bag. You guys want to tell us, we're going to get into the independent stores pretty soon, but why don't you tell us what your favorite independent store is? Tag that independent store so that we can show them some love and give them some business. These are the types of things that you'll find in those independent stores. What is this? It's pretty simple. Okay, it's just a stylus cleaner, just the tiniest little cleaner that you put a little bit of liquid and you clean off your stylus. Why? Because your stylus is what touches the record and it's what causes all the schmutz, right? A lot of shit gets stuck to that stylus. So this basically allows you to clean it and keep your needle fresh and tasty so that your records sound a whole lot better. And I'm a big fan of it, so much so that I asked for a couple more because I use this brush with I use it every time I listen to a record, every time I flip a side. So the bristles kind of came apart after, not apart, but they kind of like came after like 1,000 times, you know, that kind of happened. So I wholeheartedly endorse this type of a thing, and the winner of the swag bag will get one, as well as records from Vinyl Me Please and Run Out Groove and Org Music. But it was fun to give these records away. Of course, they were all supposed to be in a big swag bag, and it was supposed to be that easy. But, you know, as you get there, you wind up going there and there. I just wound up going up and down, always giving stuff away. The bad thing is that I'm running around all the time. The good thing, though, the really good thing is that it did my heart good to just keep going up and down because I was doing it with purpose. I was representing the companies that support this type of show and make this stuff for you. But more importantly, I was making people happy. So for me, it's pretty simple. It always does come down to the music. Okay. When it is that I'm able to pull this record out and say, dude, you don't know what this is, it doesn't matter. This is the rap and hip-hop record from Vinyl Me Please. And Energy Control Center is some deep-ass, dirty, dirty, dirty funk. Dirty funk. Actually, this is the jazz one. Dirty funk from Texas. Obscure stuff, right? So that was fun to just watch people get kind of all excited. Oh, really? The fact that they didn't know the music doesn't matter. That's the fun of hanging out with people and talking music, man. It's just, oh, really? I can't wait to listen to this. I don't have a copy of Judy Sill, which is the record that Run Out Groove made available, because I ran out of records to give away. I gave away my copy to somebody. I'll be getting one soon, but Judy Sill is... she's a folk singer who committed suicide and came from around the California area, if I'm not wrong, but mentally ill and kind of weird, you know, so she would sing about all the peace and love stuff and throw spaceships in the mix because she was crazy. And they released this double album of rarities and singles, and it couldn't have hit the spot any better, because California was full of people who actually knew who Judy Sill was, which was fun. It gave me a little bit of context. There's a thing about every area you visit, and here we're going to get into the record shops, right? There's a thing about every area that you visit when it comes to records. There's a local flavor when you go to independent stores, because some stores have some records and other stores don't have other stores have other records. When you go to the Midwest, you're going to find probably a whole lot more country western. You go to Nashville, it's the same thing. All the independent labels come into the picture, it's the same thing. LA has its thing. Okay, Judy Sill was part of its thing, so it makes it so that I wound up coming home without my copy of the Judy Sill record, because I gave it away, but now I can't wait to get it. Whereas before I didn't know anything. So that's one thing that I left from California. Okay. All right. So 5 o'clock. We're all starving at this point, right? No, actually it was the Thursday. Well, yeah. The Thursday is the first time. I guess I'm going to give you a few little stories. I don't know if they're going to be interesting, but they were interesting to me. I get off the plane. Listen, I'm a dumbass, all right? I don't know how to pack. I don't know how to tie my own shoes. My wife, you know, she's like my wet nurse. I'm not good. I'm not good. So what do I do when I get on the plane? I get on the plane exactly the way I left the house, which is to say that I had a pair of pants, I didn't change my shirt, I had a pair of flip-flops on. Cheap flip-flops. Walmart flip-flops. And I got on the plane. I boarded the plane like that. Thursday comes around. I'm waiting for the Friday. I had already put in my day. I figure, you know what? I got this thing about California. There's a lot of Latin people there. Fish tacos, right? If you're going to get a fish taco, that's the place. And there's a lot of food trucks. So for me, I like soul food. I love tasting food from the area. It's what I look for. And fish tacos and refried beans and that type of kind of like Latin flavor is what I look for. And the more authentic or grungy it is, the better I like it. So I look for the food trucks. I don't look for all the ritzy-titsy places. That's not me. I like sitting down and knowing there's an abuela out there fucking stirring up a pot. And she's going to make something just for me. I look for that. So I go out with my flip-flops on fucking, what's that, Sunset Boulevard. I go walking along. I figure it's going to be okay. Buy a bit of pot. From there, I'm going to walk to Cosmic Records. It's the first one. What do I know? 5-kilometer walk, 5-mile walk. It was a long walk. I'm walking in these flip-flops. My feet are fucking killing me. I got this t-shirt on. I got this headband on. I got this, I don't know. Dude, I don't know how to dress. I dress like a vomit. I'm very bright. Along L.A., everybody, they're talking into their phone. The phones are very big in L.A. They're talking into their phones, people having their entire drama of their life in the middle of the street, screaming it. So what the fuck? All right, it's LA. What should I talk about? I look like I'm a fat dude from Florida just walking by. At one point, my feet hurt. You know why? Because flip-flops. And, you know, it's not like I don't have shoes. I own shoes. I forgot to pack my shoes. So I'm walking, my feet are killing. Finally, I walk right past this nice little thing here, you know, little cabin, nice painted thing. I'm going to have a fish taco. So as I have my fish taco, I see the old man in the back and I see the daughter. They're probably family. Order the entire thing. Now, I'm sitting down. There's this whole area. There's a bunch of Latin people all the way in the corner, right? They're occupying all the tables in the corner. So as I'm waiting for my food, I sit right there. And they're all looking at me. And one of them, yeah, no problem. You can sit there. I hadn't thought of anything, right? I'm a bumpkin from Montreal. And then my head starts going all crazy. Because I start thinking to myself, am I in on something here? Was there some kind of private gathering here? Was this some kind of meeting spot? Because they were all Latin. And I'm in on something, and I'm intruding. And I felt uncomfortable. Because they think, who's this fucking white narc? I don't know. I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying that that's what happens in my diseased mind. So then I start thinking about how I can fix this situation. And I start thinking to myself, hey, you know what? What it is that I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them, hey, Am I interrupting anything, you know, altogether? And then I thought to myself, horror of horrors, I can't do that either, because you know what? Then I look like the racist white guy. What? Just because you see a couple of Latin people sitting down at the table, automatically you expect something to happen. And that would have been true too. So I'm just sitting there in my fucking misery that I put myself in, because I just sat there. Most people just go, they enjoy a taco. They have a drink, everything's beautiful. Me, I'm fucking miserable there eating my taco. Delicious tacos. Oh, delicious tacos. But not knowing if I interrupted, if I didn't interrupt. I sit down. My feet are hurting because I got these shit sandals on. So I eat. Delicious. I walk another 3 miles, Cosmic Vinyl. They say they close at 9. I got there at 8:30. The place is closed. I'm there, fuck it. The first thing I got to do tomorrow is go to Target, buy some shoes, take a Uber back. Anyway, do all of that. That was my first taco. That was my first experience of trying to go to Cosmic Vinyl. Closed. Didn't work. Thursday comes along. Stoughton hadn't happened yet. Meet up with Evan and Sunshine. We go out for some food. And here's where it is that we have a chance to check out our first record store. And here's where the first story comes. Sorry, I want to get the right record. Let's go. Want to see it's not here? Boom. Okay, look. I guess I should start with a couple of things. I'll be talking about Grail records, firstly. And I'll be talking, I'll be kind of offering my impressions of the record stores that we went and see, one by one. Okay? And I want to make sure that you understand the standard, and you can basically, you know, from there judge where it is that I'm coming from. For me, Grail is got nothing to do with price. It's got nothing to do with rarity. It's got nothing to do with any of that. Grail usually means that I looked for the record for a very long time, or there's a story attached to it. There's something that makes me want this. And usually, the longer I delay this type of gratification of actually getting it, the more satisfying it is when I actually do find it. With a little bit of a caveat. I understand that a lot of these records are available on Discogs. To me, Discogs is cheating. I buy from Discogs, but I like digging them out. The entire point of this was to dig this stuff out. So, why don't we talk about Marvin Gaye, Here My Dear. It's a record that doesn't get spoken about. It's a double record, and there's an amazing story behind it. So, I'll kind of give you an idea of why this record was a grail and why it was something that I looked for so long. I'm a big fan of Marvin Gaye. I'm a big fan of Motown and all of that. And, you know, I read a lot of biographies. And I've read Motown biographies on, Marvin Gaye as well. And there's a story behind all of this. Marvin Gaye, as you know, tragic life, tortured guy, raised by, a pastor with really strong religious ideas. And it caused Marvin all sorts of torture because he wanted to live one way, and his morality or his upbringing, his church upbringing, kind of was at odds with that. And, you know, he was a drug addict and an impulsive guy, and from all intents and purposes, somebody, who wasn't always all that nice. Cocaine, you know? So, what happens? I'll tell you the story behind this record. And yeah, it's one of those records that you don't hear about very much, but there's some of you out there that know it. And you're saying, oh shit. I'll tell you why they think that. Once you know the backstory, it makes the record that much more that you want it. Okay, the deal is that we have early Marvin, which is kind of the romantic stuff with Tammy Terrell and the duets and kind of like that old Motown sound. And then we have the more conscious Marvin, like What's Going On. Okay, and that's the stuff he wanted to do. Now, Marvin Gaye was very keen on advancing his career. So what it is that he did was he married Berry Gordy's sister, who was, I think he was something like 25 or 23 or something like that at the time. And she was 41. So there was an enormous age gap. But if you read enough, if you read enough on the topic, it was very much a marriage of convenience. Okay. for both of them. Marvin wanted to get closer, and Motown was blowing up, right? The 60s, the 70s, blowing up. So Marvin is looking for his way in. Marvin is looking to make sure that he's at the front of the pack and he's the one who gets all the attention and moves his career forward. So to him, the way it is that he sees it is, hey, you know what? I married Berry Gordy's sister. I'm in right from the beginning. Berry Gordy's sister, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. It was, you know what? She liked the lifestyle from all accounts. So she gets to hang out with one of the big names. She gets to go to all the parties. She had a lavish lifestyle, which was paid for by all of this. I don't know more than that. Again, I'm going by hearsay, and I mean, this is the oral tradition, eh? So I'm pretty sure that there's a bunch of facts missing. But that's basically the idea. All this is to say that it wasn't founded on love. Okay. Love was there, but there was very much a marriage of convenience. Everybody kind of like pulled for their end of things. So a couple of years go by. Marvin had a very strong Madonna whore complex. The Oedipus complex was something very real due to his upbringing, you know? So he was one of those guys that went to prostitutes a lot. He paid for sex a lot. He cheated on his wife a whole lot. And she cheated on him. So these people weren't exactly loyal to each other. All this is to say that the relationship was completely falling apart. And it led to some massive fights at the dinner table, especially when What's Going On comes out, right? Because Motown was very, you know, they used to send their artists to finishing school, so they presented themselves a certain way. Everything was very fixed. It was an amazing product. It was just really well the way everything was put together. Okay, and Berry Gordy got big on exactly that. And when he moved from Detroit to L.A., you know, that was even more so. Marvin Gaye, Vietnam, you know, the world was changing. The civil rights movement, the world was changing. Marvin Gaye's brother went to fight in Vietnam and came back. When he came back from there, returned not the same person, and it affected him. So he wanted to release a record about protest, about environment, about the war, and Berry Gordy was very against this because it's straight from the formula, and he wanted to just stick to doing things the way they were doing things all the time. So there were tremendous fights. Eventually the record came out, and we know the history behind it. Okay, let's fast forward a bunch of years. The relationship between Berry Gordy and his wife eventually falls apart. Now, Marvin Gaye was horrible with his finances, horrible. He didn't know what to do. He got suckered in by these get-rich-quick pyramid schemes. He just got suckered in all the time. It wasn't his forte. He didn't have a lot of money. His wife, you know, had her lifestyle, so now they're going to get divorced. He doesn't have any money. He doesn't have any money. He can't pay for anything. Supposedly, way back in the 70s, you're looking at, what, $6,000 or $7,000 a month. Okay? So, in order to make this happen, what it is that the judge says and what it is that they agree on is a deal whereby Marvin Gaye had to make a $600,000 payment, half of which would be used from the advance of his next record, and the other half which would come from the proceeds of selling this record. And they agreed upon that. So $600,000 payment, $300,000 straight to the wife. Now, that record was this. Here, my dear. And you'd think it's nothing, but of course, Marvin being who Marvin is, all confused, you know, he thought he was just going to go into the studio, blow something out, and it's like, hey, here you go, I fulfilled my duty, it's done. That's not the way it goes. He starts thinking about the divorce, and he starts digging into his feelings, and pours it all into this double record. So all of a sudden, something that was just supposed to be this afterthought winds up being this double record where he talks about divorce, and he talks about betrayal, and he talks about anger, and he talks about, you know, goes back to the woman he fell in love with, really the entire thing. Anybody that suffered a breakup will understand this immediately. It is just about as personal as, it's the most personal record in Marvin's collection, but just that entire story and how it is that he really, really poured his soul into making it instantly makes this a record where, whoa, I want to know. It doesn't have any hits on it. It doesn't. Didn't sell well either. But the fans, the diggers, they know. So, what he does is he puts this record out and he calls it Here My Dear. To say, here my dear, here it is. This is your divorce payment. And you'll notice, you know, justice on the one side, a couple kissing on the other side for cheating. There's all sorts of imagery. Okay. Check this, man. Open up the Monopoly board with judgment. Really imagery, stark imagery. All this is to say that it makes for an extremely poignant package. And I can say without any doubt that I've had this on CD for 20 years and paid attention to it, but, you know, I wind up putting on the other Marvin records, but I always liked it. I always played it, and it's a great record. It really is. But as time went by, I started knowing the stories. And as I knew this story about the divorce, I wanted the record even more. So I bought it on CD, and then when I started collecting vinyl again in 2010, I've been looking for it ever since. So when I say it's a grail record, that's how I mean it. It's a grail record in that sense. So Thursday comes around. Finally bought myself a good pair of running shoes. We go have some dinner. Cosmic Vinyl is open, so we go in. And I'm flipping through, and I kind of like, when I went to this, I fully went in with the idea of buying jazz for the most part, mostly CTI, and mostly Impulse. Everything else is kind of open, and some hip-hop, right? Especially if I could get the West Coast stuff. So as I go in, this Marvin Gaye is playing. Right from the start, I go right in. This Marvin Gaye is playing. I don't think anything of it. I go straight to my stacks, but I keep hearing it. It's like, fuck, you know, I've been looking for this record since forever. So after digging out a couple of records, I go to the person working the counter and ask her, hey, do you happen to have a copy of Marvin Gaye? Here it is. It's a double album. And it's playing, but I hadn't put the two things together. So she goes to the back. She goes, what, you mean this? Sunshine and Evan were there. I squealed like a bitch. It's like, oh, shit! I finally found this fucking thing. I was happier than ever. I bought the thing immediately. The owner of Cosmic was there. He knew that we were there for the record crawl, welcomed me, immediately gave me a 10% discount, good records. I left with a grail that I hadn't even thought of coming with. I was so happy to find it. Now, I guess I'm going to go, because I started talking about the record stores, I'll kind of start talking about my standard a little bit of what it is that I look for, okay? I look for a couple of things when I visit a used record store, and there were another four. We visited four in all. Cosmic Vinyl was the first one. Then on Saturday, we went to the Record Parlour, we went to Amoeba, and we went to Permanent Record. All in all, we were about a dozen of us, okay? So, the thing that I look for is, first of all, how do you grade your records? Okay. The grading can go all over the place. Okay, and with the revival, you see that people are putting, the prices are jumping. If you go to Discogs, and you'll notice the difference between the minimum price and the maximum price, there's a chasm that exists this big. Okay, so how do you go through this? You inspect, you make sure the record looks nice, and for me, one of the things that I do look for is, it's not a game changer, it's not a deal killer, but I look for if there's a clean sleeve. I look for if the record's been washed. I look for, you know, did they care for this record, or did they just buy it and toss it? That's the first thing. The second thing is pricing. Very important. I'm not saying that this has to be the way it is with everybody, but for me, the way it is that I judge a record store is by the way they price their records. And I judge it, my standard, my personal standard is Discogs. Because Discogs offers an entire history of all the records sold on that marketplace. And it's the biggest, used vinyl marketplace online. So you have the minimum and the maximum. And I said, a chasm can exist between the two prices. But then you got the median price in between. The way it is that I judge when I buy a record, and whether it is that I'm going to a record store that's just basically trying to rip me off, or a record store that's reasonable and tries to do it right, is I look at the median price. Okay, so the maximum could be, it's sold for $60 at one point, and the minimum can be that it's sold for $5. But the median, tells you what it is that it's sold for, this whole thing. So if there were 100 of these records sold, and the median price is $20, that's what I look for. Okay. And when I see this $20, I go into a store, and if I see that it's priced around the median price, I think that they price it fairly. If it's priced below, maybe they don't know. If it's priced way up, I kind of know. And the thing is, you can't judge on just one record. But as you flip through a bunch of records, you start seeing a pattern. And you start noticing how how the shop owners price their records. You start seeing it. Okay. Now, I've had one shop owner tells me, I don't use Discogs. That's the dumbest thing in the world, because let's face it, Discogs is absolutely the place where you can see what the marketplace is. So if you're not using Discogs, you're either willfully and ignorantly not using an important, valuable tool, or you're lying because you're trying to get around pricing things properly. And you know what? That one person that told me they don't use Discogs, their prices are through the motherfucking roof. 4 times higher than what you see on Discogs. So they price it the way they want. That's the only example that I have on that end. But all this is to say that I think that it's a very good way of kind of like judging how things are priced and graded. Cosmic Vinyl, I bought, 5 or 6 records. First of all, we felt very welcome. They spoke to us. I gave them the record. They were spinning the record. I was under the impression that it was just playing on Spotify, but the girl gave me the record that was right there spinning on the turntable. So that made me like it very much. It was that little bit of kismet, that little bit of serendipity that made owning this particular record that much better. So I got that. Immediately, give these people 10%. Not just me. All of us. Give us 10%. That was cool. I loved it. That made us, feel, thank you for your business. And after coming and buying 5 or 6 records, I noticed that all across the board, everything was right around median. As far as I'm concerned, that tells me that the pricing is absolutely right. So when I have to talk about Cosmic Vinyl, I can talk about friendliness. I can talk about discount. I can talk about informative, because they did inform me on the records, and I can talk about quality. Okay, there was a good selection of records there, a good bunch of jazz. There was a big selection of soundtrack, which I didn't have a chance to look at. Too bad, because I really want to. Next time I'll go through those soundtrack. There was a good collection of used and new, right? Because some places just focus on new. Some good selection of used records. That's one big thing for me when going to independent stores. I like used records a lot. And they were fairly priced and fairly graded. So I couldn't have asked for better. They also gave me a pin, which I didn't take with me because, pointy airplane. Didn't want to take a chance. And they gave me 2 stickers. This Cosmic Vinyl sticker and another one that I put up on my shelves here. Overwhelmingly amazing experience. So this is the Thursday before. Now, Friday, told you about Stoughton. There were a couple of us there. As we go there, Rob, who works at Stoughton, is with his family, and he decides, you know what, we're going to come record shopping with you. To me, that's the best thing in the world. He's got a 13-year-old son, Austin, who just began getting into this. So we were just talking about music, and for me, there's nothing I love more than nerding out with people. I love just digging next to others, and digging not only for myself, but digging for others. Being able to pull out that record that's priced right, looks right, and I know it's in my collection, and I know that if I didn't have it, I would buy it immediately, but it's there, and you pass it on and say, hey, check this out. And if you know enough about the person's music, you introduce them to things. I live for that. I think all of us live for that. That's why we do what we do on Vinyl Junkies. So I was happy that Austin was going to be there. 13 years old, young kid, clearly worships his father. Saturday comes around. I guess before Saturday we should get to the end of Friday. Two people show up late to the Stoughton party. Nelson and his uncle Oscar. Nelson Garcia and his uncle Oscar. And I hadn't thought anything because I was already thinking about, going home and finishing the entire thing. But it turns out that these are the people that I spent the entire weekend with for the easiest reason in the world. We went, we drank, we had fun. And Oscar, Nelson Garcia, who's a part of our forum, his brother-in-law, just decided that he was going to take me around. No one asked. And I had mentioned, my thing for fish tacos. So doesn't he say, hey, we're going to take you home. Let's go eat something. And he started me on this hunt for fish tacos. And now there's one thing you need to know about LA, driving in LA. This whole thing of fucking looking at your phone while you're driving? Everybody does it in LA. You tell people not to do it, you're the one who looks like an asshole. It's like, who are you fucking kidding? So everybody looks at their phone. It's crazy. Dangerous, but what do I know? So he's looking at his phone. What he's looking at his phone, I don't think is important, but he's over there looking to see if he can find me the best tacos in LA. Nice! But dude, drive the motherfucking car. Don't look at the tacos. After 20, 30 minutes of this heart palpitations, I realized this is the way Californians drive, so I started settling down. Crying a little inside, heart attack a little inside, but still. Looks here, looks there, looking for tacos. Go to a taco place. He takes me to this taco. These are supposed to be amazing tacos. Okay, we go in. Immediately it's wrong. You know why it's wrong? Koreans are serving me, and it's one of those counter type places like Dagwood's. There's no fucking abuelas here. There's no abuelas. But we're gonna eat. Turns out it was the best fish taco I had there because they fried their fish. It was delicious, but didn't get it right. It was half there. Let's move on to Saturday. Saturday, I wind up with Oscar and Nelson. These are the people, three amigos. We hung out all day. We wound up meeting everyone everywhere. The first stop we make is, it was supposed to be a record store called As the Record Spins. That was where our tour was supposed to start, but after reading Yelp reviews, and I'm not saying it's to shit on anybody, but just kind of like to give you an idea of how the mentality goes. We're trying to herd a bunch of people and get them together so that we can buy a bunch of records together. It's like herding cats. Okay, so As the Record Turns is where we're going to start. But after I look at a couple of reviews and read, what your comments, it seems like the store kind of opens whenever it wants. I couldn't really have that because we're trying to bring people together, so we wound up passing it off. It's not to say that it was open, it wasn't open, I don't know. All this is to say that I would like to have gone to As the Record Turns because I hear it's a fantastic shop, but didn't wind up happening there. We started at the Record Parlour. So the Record Parlour was one of the places that was suggested because I heard there was a good selection of old records, used records, and there was a good selection of jazz, which I wanted. So, all right, let's start there. Came out with a ton of stuff. One thing that I can tell you is that LA is a good jazz town, man. Some of my favorite artists, my favorite guitarist is Gabor Szabo. Kind of like this gypsy guitarist, and LA is most definitely a Gabor Szabo town. You can find tons of that. If you're looking for CTI, you will find tons of CTI. It's there. It's there. And I was happy. Now, there was one thing I wasn't happy with. That's what I'm looking for. But I'll try to be fair. Okay, so I find a bunch of jazz. I find a bunch of CTI, I find a bunch of Impulse, me and the Orange and Black. Very, very happy, very happy. In terms of pricing, the selection was fantastic. The records look like they weren't handled after the fact, so, a lot of fingerprints, dust, and stuff like that, so buy them, put them in the shelves. Maybe it's a little different with the more expensive ones. I didn't buy the really more expensive ones simply because I didn't find what those types of records, but I found a lot of CTI and Impulse, and that's exactly what I was going for, okay? in terms of pricing, priced just a little bit above median. So I was happy with that. I was okay with it, but priced above median. One thing which we can blame or not blame, but it should be said. Look, I walked out with 43 records. I didn't check them. I didn't open up every bag, and I didn't check the condition. I didn't do any of that. I just kind of assumed for time, and because there were so many people and I was trying to handle a whole lot of things, I assumed that the record store looked at the records, visually graded, and priced everything correctly. Not so. This may be a mistake. I'm just relating my experience, but there was one thing that happened was this good Borzabo record. I mean, look at it. It's not a CTI or anything like that, but this picture of a motor. The record's called Macho. I'd never seen it before. It's beautiful, beautiful album cover. Immediate. $15.98. Happy. No problem, but I didn't look at it. What winds up happening is I take it home, and as I play it, it's not just a warp, but there's a lip. A lip is what happens, not when the record's just all warped, but it's warped only on the edge. So what happens is it just causes this lip at the edge that makes the record impossible to listen to. That happens when the record's been left out in the sun. And that can't be fixed. That can't be fixed. So basically what wound up happening is I bought this record which cost me $16, and it's my own fault that I didn't check on the condition of it, but the record had a lip on it. This stuff doesn't belong in the stores, but like I said, it's on me. Okay. One of the big things that I found was Canned Funk, CTI. We're working on this compilation of CTI records with Org Music. So I'm buying all the CTI I can buy because I want to make these great compilations. One of them is going to be a funk compilation. And one thing I told Rossiter at Org was, whatever you do, we got to put Canned Funk on it because it's just a jam. Finding this, I mean, look, a can of peaches with an eyeball in it. That should kind of tell you immediately. I found this. I was thrilled to shit. I was so happy. Okay. So, overwhelming success. Record Parlour, would I go back? Yes, I would absolutely go back. I would check my records, though. That was my mistake. So we left there. I don't know. I can't say how much the others bought. Spent about $120 there. Pretty decent, right? Then we move on to Amoeba, and that's where most of us kind of got together. Everyone, it was awesome. There were so many of us. Danny Almazan, who was on the forum, came with his son, and Rob came with his wife, and with his son Austin, and a bunch of people. Now, it's a big store, so we couldn't just all get together. It's a huge store, but we kind of just went from place to place, and there were kind of satellites of Vinyl Junkies all over the store. Since like we went here and we went there and we went there. I spent a ton of money there. And the reason is pretty simple. The selection can't be beat. New and used, there's a ton of used stuff. In terms of pricing, if we look at the median, the pricing was right on. Absolutely fair. Absolutely fair, absolutely well graded, and there were no surprises, none. Cheap, amazing records, good, expensive, amazing records, it was all there. So, in my estimation, it might seem like the most obvious thing in the world, but Amoeba is pretty much the standard in terms of used independent stores. It had all of it. There were a couple of people who were trying to coordinate me doing a what's in your bag there. It didn't wind up happening, but it may happen in the future. But I can't speak more to that. But there was one thing, besides finding everything, there was one thing that I didn't like about Amoeba, okay? And I kept it together just to kind of show you. They do this thing. This record is a perfect example of it. Joe Farrell, Penny Arcade. Again, a CTI record. Motorcycle. Immediately. I didn't open this because I had opened already 2 or 3 that were exactly like this, and I realized there's a frustration. This record is sealed all the way through. There's tape. Okay? Now, it's taped very carefully, and I would assume that it's taped very carefully so that people don't steal. You got to leave your bags at the front. You know, they're very big. I'm pretty sure they got a problem with it. They got security, so they need to do all of this. I understand. It's a big store. But you see, there's a problem with a record like this. I'll tell you what it is. It's not the price. It's not the condition. It's not nothing. Everything's right. But what happens is that you got to eventually open this package. So the first one that I opened, I start undoing the tape, and I realize that it takes me forever to do this. Now, that's not what the issue is. The issue is that as I'm doing this, I'm also kind of manipulating the cover, and the corners are bending, and it's like, well, this fucking tape now is making it so that if I continue trying to open it the way I'm opening it, I'm going to ruin my own record. So this is not convenient. It doesn't allow me to actually open the record and inspect it in the store either. Okay, not convenient. What it is that I started doing is I just started taking a scissor and cutting the top off and throwing the bag out altogether. Okay, so that's probably the only bad thing I would say about Amoeba. You can't inspect a record that's sealed like this. Maybe you're going to stop people from buying it, but you know what? It's a $10 record. It's a $10 record. It would have made my life a whole lot easier. That's the only really thing that I can say about Amoeba. In terms of the selection, it was amazing. There were a few things that made me really happy. One thing that made me thrilled, actually there were two things, okay, which will lead me to my Herbie Hancock story. Wow, we're going long. I still got stories. I hope if you guys find it interesting enough, but I do have more stories. We haven't even gotten to permanent records yet. I found another grail while I was there, and why don't we start with Austin? We'll start with Rob Machad of Stoughton coming with his family, his wife Lisa. Short, 4 foot nothing, Oompa Loompa, short little woman. Austin, super cool kid. Rob going out and doing this thing, alt country, all this. Now, as I'm going around, I really was keen on hanging out with Austin because I remember myself as a 13-year-old kid, and I would have really loved it if an older person paid attention to me and spoke music with me. So it's something that I really wanted to do. They were having a family outing. He's a big into the Godzilla, so they were going to go visit this Godzilla place and shop for records. Now, I go into the soundtrack section because it's what I do, right? I collect soundtracks, and I see Lisa there. 4 foot nothing. And she's on her tiptoes. And she's like this. She's trying to get through all of the soundtrack. Hey, Lisa. How you doing? What are you looking for? So, oh, well, you know, my son really likes soundtracks. So I thought that we'd look for this. Like, look, I found this to, I don't know, there was some kind of anime movie, and I never even knew that this was on vinyl. So we're going to buy it for this. And this is the part that killed me. This is the part that's like, really? 13 years old, Austin. She goes, oh, yeah, and he really likes Ennio Morricone soundtracks. So I'm trying to find him one. When I was 13, I knew nothing of Ennio Morricone. I now own over 100 Morricone soundtracks, and I'm obsessed with him. He's just my favorite thing to collect. And, you know, he's released on record, over 500 soundtracks? Good luck finding them all. To hear that there was this kid who knew Morricone, and Lisa went into details that, well, you know, I'm looking for a record. I want to give him something new, but, you know, maybe I don't want to do any more of the spaghetti western because he already has that. So what it is that I'm finding out is that this kid, not only does he like Morricone, which is already the first mind blower, but he already owns a lot of the spaghetti western, and the mother is looking for records outside of the spaghetti western because he's next level Morricone, 13 years old. What do? The little hairs start going up on your arm. You start getting excited. Hey, let's find some records for him. I got a lot of Morricone. And we just sat, me and Lisa. First of all, she could get down. I started flipping through and helping her out. Right? And what I pulled out was this record called Paura. She was looking at a bunch of them. And you can find a lot of this stuff. And it's hard to judge one Morricone for a record from another because there's so much of it. But as she was looking for something, I found this compilation, this series of compilations, 2 LP compilations. There's volume 1 and volume 2 called Paura. Okay, Paura translated from Italian is fear. And what it is that they're compilations of some of Morricone's more messed up, abstract, chilling music, if you want to call it that. A lot of this stuff is stuff that he recorded. It's not the cinematic stuff, like the really pretty stuff, you know. It's some of the stuff that he recorded with one of his ensembles, his jazz ensembles called what is it, Nuovo Consonanza, I believe it's called, but really avant-garde stuff, which comes off really well on the Giallo movies. So you're going to find a lot of this stuff, let's say, on the Dario Argento soundtracks and so forth, right? And Giallo movies. These compilations seemed like the best thing because it wasn't the spaghetti western that he already knew, and it still had a scary theme. I knew he liked Godzilla, so I figured I would go. So now I'm curious to see what he thinks about these records, about this record. I hope he likes it. I hope that I chose right. But the fact that I was able to suggest this made my day in Amoeba. I can't tell you how happy it made me. And Austin, if you're watching, I'm going to give you one more suggestion if you find it, okay? Give me a sec. I got to dig it up. Am I going on too long? I hope not. Here we go. Look. I found, this is an original, okay? It's written in French, L'Affaire Mori, but this is actually a record that's available on reissue also. An Italian label called Dago Red put out a bunch of fantastic Ennio Morricone stuff, and the record's called Il Prefetto di Ferro. So if you see this name here, Il Prefetto di Ferro, why would I point this out to anybody? Because it's almost like Morricone and his different tastes, right? Or his different styles. He had the spaghetti western. He had the scarier Giallo stuff. This is the music that he did for mobster movies. So this is actually about a Sicilian clan. It's about the mobsters. And there's one song that's straight up sung in Sicilian. And you can hear Godfather. You can hear the fucking it's just... It really captures the feel of old Italy, and it captures the feel of, you know, the mobster, the Godfather. So if you like that type of thing and you want to look for it, look for this here. It's called Il Prefetto di Ferro. Should be cheap, should be easy to find. Tell your mom or dad to go out and buy it for you. It's a good one. Okay. Continuing on that, as I drop my records everywhere, I love introducing people to music. So while we were at the record parlor, Oscar, I put a Bob James record in his hand. And there were two of these Bob James records. One I took for me and one I gave to him because they were cheap. And I figure he'd like it. I hope he does. And then Nelson, who's big into the hip hop and, you know, has a pretty deep collection. But doesn't know CTI, didn't know CTI too much. This is where it is that I really had fun. This is where the payoff comes to record stores and why these record crawls are as amazing as they are. As we're digging through, I've had this forever. This is a Diodato record on CTI. It's prototypical. You see this record everywhere. It's available everywhere. In LA, it was available everywhere. Beautiful gatefold. The thing with this CTI record is if you collect CTI records, you know that they sound amazing. They're produced amazing. All-star team. Okay, so Diodato, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, Steve Gadd on the... Just an all-star team of musicians. And anybody who likes hip-hop will catch a bunch of the samples because this music, a lot of hip-hop was sampled from this music and this style. And I knew that Nelson didn't have it, so won't I dig this up? And I see a copy for $2. Put it in his hand. Nelson, you gotta have this. Take this. Just take it home. I don't know who this is. Doesn't matter. Take it home. Where the payoff is? Payoff is when I come back to Montreal at the end of the trip and I see Nelson's posts on the forum, and he's now posting 4 different Diodato records, and when I had met him just the Saturday before, he had none. So he liked it enough to go out and buy a bunch more. There is nothing more satisfying. I hipped him to the fact that CTI is very affordable. It's very good. Very good. And it's the roots of hip-hop. It's the roots of jazz hip-hop. There's nothing more satisfying than that. So, that's Amoeba, right? Go get another fish taco. I guess I'll make this last one short because it was a short thing. Most folks just stayed at the Amoeba. By the end, it was the 3 amigos, which is to say me, Nelson, and Oscar. Went for another drive. Oscar, ever the gracious host, wanted to take me up to the Hollywood sign. Too much traffic. I told him to turn around. I don't give a fuck enough. But one thing that he did was the Capitol building. Hey, you want to see the Capitol building? As a Sinatra fan, it's like, how can you not want to see the Capitol building? He took me right there, and I was able to take a beautiful picture, and it's just, I had chills down my spine, because the Capitol building is Frank Sinatra history. A lot of Frank Sinatra's best period is very arguably the Capitol period. And the heyday, you know, his comeback was during that period. There's a whole bunch of stuff associated to that iconic building. So for me, seeing it really mattered. It put the whole thing together. It kind of put the story, the narrative all together. I was happy to do it. And more so, it felt good to see that this gentleman that I met, you know, 24 hours earlier, just found it in his heart to do this for me. That's the types of bonds, that's what you look for, you know. And I had asked him to take me to South Central, because I just wanted to see where, you know, I wanted to see where Crenshaw Boulevard is, and I wanted to see where all these things, maybe I'll get shot, maybe not, but I wanted to see it. And he was going to take me, but it didn't wind up happening. That'll go for the next visit. So after we have some other fish tacos, they were decent, nothing special in this case. By this point, I had spoken about fish tacos enough that even Nelson and Oscar ordered fish tacos. The shittiest tacos on the tour, the fourth ones, but shittiest tacos on the tour. We're going to continue this tour. We're going to find good fish tacos in L.A. Okay. We wind up at Permanent Records. Permanent Records was my third stop. Now, I was told by many people that I should go visit this shop, and it has a fantastic reputation. And okay, that's why I went. It's a small shop. Almost a corridor. Not very big. The selection was okay. The records looked like they weren't handled. There were some new and used. There was some used. They had some new stuff. It was all right. I found records. They were fairly priced. They didn't look like they were handled outside of, you know, they weren't cleaned or anything like that. So, you know, you buy them and you stack them type of thing. But everything was fine. And there's this big staircase where, you know, a band goes all the way upstairs. You practically have to watch the show up like this. But there was a band that was obviously playing, you know, preparing for a live show. So the place started filling up with people that were not there to buy records. And by this time, it was 5 o'clock, and I was fed up. So just picked up a couple of records. I picked up good records. This is one of the records that I picked up. And this will be my last story, because we're really reaching long time. But this here, Herbie Hancock, I'd never seen this record. Treasure Chest, double album. But the thing with this record is, if I don't see it, and it's Herbie Hancock, and it's from a certain period of time, I'll buy it. I've said many times before that my favorite music is black music, predominantly black music, but all music, basically, period 65 to 75 is my absolute favorite period. But blaxploitation and avant-garde, all of that stuff's good. So what sold me is not so much this, but when you flip the record over, that sold me immediately. And the record was cheap, so it's like, I don't care if I have this or not. I gotta have it. No, nothing special in the inside, but I didn't know what it was. It was a blind purchase based on this. As I take it home, I realized that I made a fantastic purchase, and it's one that I can recommend to you, because what that is a 2 LP compilation of the only 3 records that Herbie Hancock released on the Warner label. And the Warner label, he released these 3 records here. Okay, the first one is Mwandishi, of which I have an original. The second one is, I had a Scorpio copy, but I found this also at Permanent Records, Fat Albert Rotunda, or an original, which I found there. And then there's this that's just a Scorpio copy, so I'm still looking for a better copy, Crossings. They're all 3 amazing Herbie Hancock records. And they're the only 3 records that he released on Warner. Now, to place it, 69, 71, and 72. So if you look at that period of time of Herbie Hancock's trajectory or career, he was working with Miles Davis, and he had worked with Miles Davis, come up through his group. And, I mean, they're the second great, you know, he made part of Miles Davis's second great quintet. But as Miles was moving on towards fusion, and doing all of that crazy funky stuff that was so heavily influenced by Sly and the Family Stone and Jimi Hendrix. All of his musicians were pretty much doing the same. So music got very heavily percussive. Music got um, very heavily just funky. And Herbie Hancock wasn't any different to this. Now, Herbie Hancock was releasing a couple of soundtracks. You know, he had released the soundtrack to Blow Up. He had released the soundtrack to The Spook Who Sat by the Door and a few others. But he really blew up. Like, he really blew up as an artist once he released Headhunters. Headhunters was it. Of course, he was always a jazz artist, but jazz is always niche. The thing is that when you cross over to, you got young kids buying your records, which of course is what Miles was doing with records like On the Corner, which, you know, not coincidentally was released around the same time. Bitches Brew, Jack Johnson, all very rock and funk, you know, and African type music. Herbie Hancock was following the same trajectory. The thing is about these Warner Brother records is that this stuff all came out right before he released Headhunters and went crazy with that period of time. So if you look at that, okay, if we look, I mean, Wandishi was released in 71, Crossing 72, 73 was Sextant, which is another weird one. Headhunters also 73. Then Thrust. Then, you know, this is all the stuff that sold tons of records for him. So what does Warner Brothers do? They know that they have these three records, and I'm assuming they didn't sell as well as you know, the stuff that he did for Columbia, but the Columbia stuff was selling well, and Herbie Hancock was everywhere, and the kids were buying it, and he has this big old fro, and you know, he's part of the generation. So what it is that they do is that they take these three Warner Brothers records and they package it into this 2 LP set. So this 2 LP set, Treasure Chest, is basically those first three Warner Brothers records minus maybe 5 or 6 songs. If you want all three of them, you go out. But if you really want kind of cheap, because it is cheap, it's a cheap comp. They sound great too. But I couldn't recommend it more. Actually, what it is that I'm going to do is, if I can find it on time, I'm going to show you that this is a record that is a perfect example of what I've spoken to in the past about Dynaflex. I don't know if I find it. Oh man, I hope I do. The thing with this record is, and of course it's perfectly timed, is that these records came out during the oil crisis, which is to say that it's during the time that they were making records a little differently and marketing them a little differently also. Marketing them as cheaper alternatives. So it's thin as hell. I hope I find it. I really want to. So many records. Holy fuck. Did I find it? Did I find it? No, I can't find it. What it is that I was going to do is I was going to just take the record and wobble it in front of you and just show you that you can literally wobble the record. It's so thin that it's malleable and you're not ruining it. It doesn't warp or it doesn't do any of that. And that's the way they sold it. But basically it's a paper thin record. Sounds good. But this Warner Brothers record was very much an example of those thinner records that they put out during the oil crisis during the 70s, where we, you know, the quality is kind of hit or miss. RCA Records released this stuff as Dynaflex. Warner Brother didn't have any particular name for it, but they were very much part of the conversation also. So that was Permanent Records, and I liked it. I mean, pricing seemed okay. They don't look like they cleaned their records, but that's neither here nor there. They were fair. I liked it. And that, my friends, was the trip. Those were the 4 record stores that we went to visit. Cosmic Vinyl, which was an enthusiastic thumbs up. Hit on all cylinders. Will definitely go back. The Record Parlour, which I really thought had fantastic jazz stacks, but were priced a little over median, and I found a Record with a Lip, which didn't make me happy. Again, on me though. Amoeba, which can't get any better as far as I'm concerned, is the standard. And Permanent Record, which was kind of small and limited, but nice. I was happy with it. I was happy with the prices. And this kind of puts me in a situation where the entire thing was so overwhelmingly positive. There were so many smiles. Everyone was so happy and excited to talk about music that you know, we took a big picture in Amoeba all together. Not everybody wanted to be in it, but I think there were 9 or 10 of us in it. I should post it up at some point, but it made me think, you know, I'm going to Making Vinyl in Detroit in October. And all the trouble is worth it if it makes people that happy. So I'm already beginning to think that maybe, if the interest is there, we'll put together a record crawl and do the same thing in Detroit. Will Third Man Records want to be a part of it? Maybe. Will, you know, other record stores, do you have suggestions, you guys? Any of you from Detroit would like to be part of it? Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Ultimately, I don't care if there's a dozen or if it's just me. I'm going to go to a record store. I'm looking for people to nerd out with. If there are people that like doing that, then we might do that. Instead of just going to the Making Vinyl conference, which starts on the Monday, October 1st, maybe I'll come in a day before so that we can have a regular old record dig and go look for some old Detroit stuff. Maybe some Mitch Ryder, original Mitch Ryder, or some original, you know what it is that my dream is? I want to find a copy of Kiss Destroyer in Detroit Rock City, because I don't have it yet. So if that could happen, that would be sweet also. And that, my friends, is pretty much my stories, I think, in terms of how the trip to LA was. Many fish tacos, looking for more, many friends were made, many stories were shared, and the fact that this happened over the space of 4 days for me, but 2 days for other vinyl junkies, should tell you that just collecting records on vinyl is not just music. It just isn't. People came out with their families. People came out to hang out. People got excited about pulling this music out. They got excited about music they haven't heard before. People took memories from this weekend and took their experience of this weekend to further their record collection and buy more. But the seed was planted there. My friends, that's what vinyl is. That's what Vinyl Junkies is. That's the difference between streaming and having a qualitative experience. Nobody can take away the convenience of drive-through, but drive-through is drive-through. Drive-through is not a sit-down meal that you prepare and that you enjoy. And thank you, LA. Thank you to everybody that showed up. Thank you so much, Jack. And Debbie, his wife, who was wonderful. Just the family affair at Stoughton. And all the people that came out to the record crawl. And Oscar and Nelson, who took me around. You guys, man. That's what this is about. I was proud. And with this said, we're going to give you guys a chance to show some love to the independent record stores, because I think that's what it's about. Go buy the records. Go tell the stories. I shared that Marvin Gaye story with the people there at Cosmic. I felt that was part of it, you know. Name your favorite record store. Put it down in the comments. Share this. Give it a couple of days. I'm going to pick a winner, and you're going to win a huge Stoughton grab bag. The same grab bag that was given away at the open house. So you're going to get records from Vinyl Me Please, and you're going to get records from Org Music and Run Out Groove, and some stickers and some t-shirts and a bunch of stuff. Why? Because it's nice to do nice things for other people. I hope you enjoyed the show. I feel like I went on forever. The fact is, I didn't even talk about Captain Beyond, which is another thing. I guess it's going to be another story, because that was another huge grail find, but I know myself. I'm going to go on for another 15 minutes about Captain Beyond. And anybody who knows Captain Beyond will understand why it would take me at least 15 minutes. And I can talk about this original Ice-T record that I found, you know, and it's a promo copy. You know, there's stuff. There's always stuff to talk about. The good part of it is that there's always another show. Next week, we're going to talk about Brazilian music, and we're going to talk about West African music with Grant Austin. And on Tuesday, we got a show with Hessler on the VMP shop. So there's more there. Plenty more to come. Thanks for paying attention. Thanks for listening. And remember, folks, always pack a pair of running shoes when you're traveling, because if you wear flip-flops, your feet are going to hurt. See you guys. Enjoy the